Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and in this Kickstarter preview series, we're going to be checking out Vampire the Masquerade Chapters from Flyos Games. It's worth mentioning that everything you'll see in this video, as well as any follow-up videos in this series, are all going to be subject to change as they're using prototype components along the way. It's also worth mentioning we're going to be diving in at scenario number 1, and there are prologue scenarios that will be included within this game that are going to allow you to not only get a firm base on the story behind this campaign, but get familiarity with the characters in the world, as well as the 3 major areas that this game focuses on, which is dialogue, investigations, and combat. Now, the prologues are structured in a way that you can learn each of these different areas one at a time, which is extremely useful on the learning side of things. However, to show you all 3 of these in action, we're just going to jump past the prologues and straight into scenario number 1. So without further ado, let's go ahead with the steps necessary to get that to the table, and then join me in a follow-up video where we go through a full solo playthrough. In this Kickstarter prototype, there are only 3 prologues included. However, in the final version of the game, there will be a total of 10 prologues that you can go through. And I'll show you quickly each of the 3 that are listed here. Again, they relate to those 3 major areas. This one here is all around combat. This next one is all about dialogue. And finally, this prologue introduces you to investigations. We'll be setting up for scenario number 1 called Dark Omen at the Park. These recent late summer Montreal nights have been plagued with several often brutal kidnappings of vampires linked to the art world. Witness reports indicate that these kidnappings were the work of a group of hooded thugs whose methods are reminiscent of the Sabbat. Thing is, there's been no sightings of the Sabbat activity in the city for more than a decade, ever since they've been eliminated by the Inquisition and its mortal agents. This has the Camarilla in an uproar and has made the city's vampires nervous. The prince convened an exceptional Elysium to warn the city's kindred and give a semblance of leadership. A group of neo-knights picked from various clans except for a single caitiff was formed to address the situation. You are part of this group, either through nomination by someone else or by joining of your own accord because you have a personal stake in this situation. Earlier this evening, Luciana Ricci, the Nosferatu in your group, spotted a truck in the botanical garden, the same one that witnesses associate with the kidnappings. You make your way there and reach Yuma's territory. He's the Gangreal Anarch leader and maintains a special tie to the Camarilla. The objective of scenario number 1 is to deal with the Sabbat group in the park, and then at the beginning of the playthrough in the following video, we'll deal with this action here to read our character's event page from 1 to 8. You can see along the side here, we'll have a number of different NPCs that we can interact with. We'll have Yuma Mackenzie, punk teenagers, the park warden, a couple, and the Sabbat priest, all laid out in terms of where they should be, represented by standees. There'll also be tokens laid out and an area for our characters to fall into line, and it looks like we have an NPC right beside us. So without further ado, let's set up the scenario board, the standees, and the tokens. The Botanical Garden scenario tile has been placed for Dark Omen at the Park. Now let's go ahead and place the standees. Yuma Mackenzie is here, the park warden is over here, we have some punk teenagers in the back, a couple here, and the Sabbat priest over here. Difficult terrain tokens have now been placed around the scenario tile, and an investigation token can be found over near the punk teenagers. Next, we're going to choose our character. Now, normally in the final version of the game, when you get to scenario number 1, you'll have already played the prologues and you'll have already set up your character, created your character. And at this particular point, we're just going to choose one for this upcoming playthrough of the 4 provided in the game. And you can see right on the player board itself the name as well as an icon above it, and that relates to the specific clan that that character associates itself to, which will not only tie it to a legacy and heritage, but also a special set of disciplines. And those flaws, as you'll see, are going to be an important fact which are going to guide your decision making throughout the entire campaign. This is the third option of a character I could control when playing solo, but what I'm going to do, as there is one more character below this, is I'm going to convert this full character to an ally card. So you can have inside of the game, when playing solo, a number of allies with you, and that way you can control multiple characters with much less maintenance while still focusing on one character that you really want to put all your time and effort into. So for Samuel Armstrong, instead of bringing his player board into the fray, I'll be bringing a single card which is going to sum up all of his initiatives, attacks, resistances, abilities, and everything to do with his AI, as well as a combat deck for him and this tracker which will go across the bottom of the card to signify his current health as we go along. So we won't be needing the player board underneath, and now we can move to the full character that I'm choosing to control during the upcoming scenario. I've chosen Erin Conway, and she represents the Gangrel well. She's strong, bold, and wild, and back when she was human, Erin was a descendant of the Mohawk Nation and fought in the Battle of Akka. One night, she returned to her home to find a man holding her brother's dead body. He'd broken his neck, and Erin had found him, but the man who, unbeknownst to her, was a vampire, overpowered her. As she lay there dying, a gangrel by the name of Yuma embraced her. Members of the Gangrel clan take Darwin's survival of the fittest statement to a T. This brutal, chaotic nature has them relying on zero authority and makes them fierce opponents. Like all Gangrel who've just been embraced, Erin was left to fend for herself and survive in the wilderness for multiple winters. This experience transformed her into a fierce warrior ready to stop at nothing to find her brother's killer and to end his life in the most brutal of ways. The next things you'll need to set up are a couple of trackers that will go beside damage, willpower, and hunger, and there are certain vampires or characters within the game that may even have some of those trackers appear on the damage, willpower, or hunger tracks based on game mechanics. For scenario number 1, none of those apply, so these all start off of the character board. We've also got a card specific to Erin Conway, and as you can see, based on the clan we just read about that she's associated with, she has specific attributes, skills, disciplines, humanity, and your notes and XP can be captured down here at the bottom. And of course, that XP is going to go back into making this character more powerful as you go through the game. We'll talk more specifically about these tracks as well as all of these different options in terms of upgrading and what they will provide for Erin when we jump into the playthrough. I've gone ahead and grabbed the 2 discipline cards for Erin Conway in this prototype, Resilience and Aspect of the Wolf. You'll see matching the same clan that she's a part of, as well as just above it in smaller print it mentions Fortitude and Protein. These are both level 1 disciplines, and they relate specifically to the disciplines based on the clan she's a part of on her character sheet. Just to connect the dots on why we have these 2 discipline cards, it's because in the discipline section down here we have the first space filled in for Protein and Feral and the first space for Fortitude. Nothing over here for Animalism, but it's another discipline we can start working on. It's also worth mentioning that as you go through the campaign, there'll be times when you have access or you're able to unlock 2 disciplines, but you have to make a choice between them, and then of course you'll be sticking with that choice throughout the campaign. The final 3 things to grab for Erin is the miniature, which we will shortly put on the scenario tile. We also have a kitchen knife, which has no immediate effect, but it's considered a melee weapon. This comes over from the prologue scenario where Erin was able to grab this and still has this knife on her. And we've also gone ahead and built the combat deck, and this is built from base deck cards, which are always in there, and then you take a look at your physical and go down the column here through athletics, brawl, weapons, and you're able to go ahead and bring cards of the associated level into this combat deck. So for instance, athletics, I have the availability to grab level 1, 2, or 3 cards, add them to the deck. For brawl, 1, 2, and 3, and for weapons, just level 1. With Aaron set up, let's talk quickly about Samuel. I already grabbed his ally card as well as his combat deck and his slider, which will track his damage. We're at the far end of the track here in terms of how much health he has, and each one of these red little blips along the line are going to represent 1 damage all the way to the end until he's taken out. And this scales based on how many players are playing. I'm playing solo, so it's going to go all the way to the end. If we had more players playing, this ally would die a little bit sooner. We also have the miniature here for him, and at this point in time, we should probably place both of our characters on the scenario tile. Aaron and Samuel have now entered the botanical garden right next to Yuma Mackenzie. Next, we're going to place our characters' tokens on the initiative track, and you can see here for Erin Conway, she has a physical attribute rating of 3, which means she'll start on the initiative track in the 3rd position. Samuel, as you'll see, based on how many players are in the game, and we're playing 1 or 2, it's going to be on the left-hand side that we care about the numbers, and initiative is 2. The track is now laid out, and on the left-hand side, we have the tokens for each of our characters in the game, Aaron and then Samuel, 3 and then 2. That's it in terms of the track. Next, let's go ahead and set up the main tracker. We have the Masquerade track here, the status track, as well as the rounds track. And for the Masquerade track, we'll start at 0. The status track is going to also start at 0, but be right in the middle. We'll talk more about what each of these tracks do when we move into the playthrough. Next, beside the round tracker, place a black authority cube, a green ally cube, a blue NPC cube, and a red for other purpose tracking cube. And you'll be using these to track various things that will pop up during this scenario. For now, they can all stay out of the round tracker. Next, go ahead and place your item cards and effect cards within easy reach. Next, find the matching scenario booklet for the scenario you're playing, in this case, Dark Omen at the Park, scenario number 1. Also ensure that your tokens for effects are placed within easy reach. There are a total of 8 in the final version of the game. For this scenario, we only need the 3 shown. We'll talk more about what these represent later on. And last but not least, also keep the dice within easy reach near the scenario tile. And that, my friends, is going to wrap up the setup for Dark Omen at the Park scenario number 1. Join me in the next video as Aaron and Samuel work together to deal with the Sabbat group in the Botanical Garden. Thanks again for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.